Hey, welcome in another beautiful episode on arrays in JavaScript. Today we're gonna talk about methods like splice, isArray, fill, find, and findIndex. The first two and the last two sound similar, but are they? Well, yes and no. Mostly no. We're gonna start with method called slice. And first of all, let's create an array. Let's call it array. Of course, let array equals to. Let's give it some food. Fish, chips, carrot, because we need to be healthy. Soup. Let's say a few more, like candy, and water. Or you know what? Beer. That's better. So the slice method, it creates new array. It's really important to remember that. It modifies the original array and it returns some part of this array. So this method takes two parameters, and I'm gonna say array dot slice. And first I want to show you that 0 and the array dot length is the default value for this method. So we're gonna see that in a moment in the example. So the first parameter is a number where we want to start in our original array, where we want to start cutting the array, and the second one is the point where we want to end. If we say array length, it just means that to the end of the array. So I'm gonna remove that and let's take a look at the example. Let's console log everything so we will be able to see what is going on. I'm gonna copy that. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 elements. Remember that we start with the index 0 at the beginning. It might be confusing later. I want to slice from the second argument, and I'm not gonna give a second parameter. So by default it will be array.length. So we say this is 0, this is 1, and this is 2. So this parameter is inclusive, so it takes carrot, soup, candy, and beer. As I refresh it, you can see that our array is cat, and now we have only 4 elements inside. If I type the second argument, let's say 4, okay, so we got 0, 1, 2, it starts here, 3 and 4, you might think. However, this is exclusive. It means that it doesn't take this argument. As I refresh it, you can see that we have only carrot and soup. We start before the index 2, right? Wait, no. Yes, exactly. It's 0 before the fish, 1 before the chips, and 2 before the carrot. And from here we go 3 and 4. And before the 4, we just got everything that was inside of it. Just as I said earlier, if I leave it alone, it gives me everything after the second argument, and the same thing happens if I say array dot length, and nothing changes. So that's how it works. What if I want to assign it to another value? Let's remove console log, let result. We've got that. Just to prove you guys that it doesn't modify the original array, I'm gonna log our array. It's like just before, right? Nothing happened, nothing is modified. You can see that result is a new array. Let's take a look now at the method called splice. So the method splice basically removes selected elements from the array, It can also replace them, but we will take a look at it in a moment. Splice takes 2 arguments for now, because to be honest, it can take infinite amount of arguments. But let's focus on the first 2, which are the most important. So splice, and splice, it can take 2 arguments. The first one is like in a slice method, the begin index, where we want to start. And the second one is the number of elements we want to delete. If we leave it alone, only the first argument, the second argument will take the rest of the elements behind this x. So by default, it's like this, and the rest of them is star, which means that all of them. Let's just take a look at the example to understand it better. Let's say we want to retract first 2 elements from this array. So we go array dot splice, and we just say 2 because we want to take 2 elements and cat the rest of them. So I will console log it. Now array, and what is important, unlike slice method, this method returns modified array, which can be tricky, but we have to remember that. And as I console log it, you can see that we got fish and chips, and the rest of the array is just deleted. Well, if I wanted to console log the whole method call like this, I will comment it, you will see that we will receive everything that is behind the first 2. So let's go back. What we can do, we can add another argument, and as we can see, this is 0, 1, 2, and from here we were deleting everything that was behind. So going with the same logic, we can also say 3, 4, 5, and you can type 6, and you will see that we got the same result. So that is cool. But what happens if we type, for example, 0 here? Nothing changes. Or minus 3000, nothing changes. Well, you might ask, why would we even do that? Well, I told you that we can pass infinite amount of arguments to this function. Yes, because this function can also be used as replace function. Let's say that we want to remove the last 2 elements, and they start at the index of 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say we want to change our diet, we want to remove candy and beer, which would be terrible, but this is just an example. 4, we need to remove 2 elements, and then we pass new elements to the array. Let's say lettuce, and let's say beet. It's very healthy. And now as I console log it, you will see that our candy and beer is unfortunately replaced with lettuce and beet. And we can do this with any kind of things like numbers and arrays. Take a look. Well, I will just leave it as it was, and let's just put it inside of array like that. And we got replaced with candy, beer, and lettuce and beet is in array. So what if we wanted these ingredients to be lined up one by one? Well, what we can do, we can use spread operator before the array. As I refresh it, it's going back to the normal. This is how it works. What you need to remember about this method, that it modifies the original array. It doesn't return new array. So everything that you change, everything that you splice will be remained and will be remembered as an old array. Let's take a look at the fill method. And the fill method works almost like splice method. its job is also to modify or to replace, to change the original array with any kind of value that we provide. Let me just go to the array that fill, and I want to fill it with pina colada, let's say, and I want to log the array. As you can see, we got a lot of pina colada. What if I, for example, wanted to take that, console log this, and also console log array? You can see that this array, this method returns the array, new array, but it also modifies the previous one. But just like we used in a splice method, we can use additional arguments in this fill method. So let me just go back, and you can say that we can add 2 more arguments, and by default this one is 0, and the other one, just like we said in the previous, the other one is the rest of the array. So the second argument says from which element we want to start replacing them with pina colada, and the third argument says to which element we want to finish. Let's say we want to replace the carrot, and the carrot is on the third index, so we say 3, and then we want to go to 4 because this is the index that we want to end with. So let's save it. Of course, we need to console log it. Array is not defined. Arrays. Okay. Now that's interesting. Okay. What happened here is that we took 0, 1, 2, and 3. So we replaced soup, and not a carrot, and we want to replace a carrot instead of soup. So we need to take under consideration that the index starts with 0 and not with 1. So now we got fish, chips, pina colada, soup, candy, and beer. It doesn't look very healthy, but well. And like in a splice method, in the third argument we said how many elements we want to delete, right? And here we just say at what index we want to finish, and we can replace it. Let's say I want to remove the last element, and as I refresh it, you will see that it's even better now, fish, chips, and 4 pina coladas. So that's epic. We can also replace it with objects if you wish. We can say like that, and name pina colada, and let's give another key. Let's say time, anytime. Let's remember about these, and as I refresh it, you can see that we got fish, chips, and inside of it we got pina colada at any time. That's how it works. It's not very complicated, it's very similar to the previous methods. And now we're gonna take a look at the method called isArray. The name of this method just speaks for itself. isArray checks if the value that we provide is an array. Sometimes in our code we are unable to tell whether we have an array that the function returns is some object or a string, and we just need to check that. Let's create a string called cat. Let's create a object name kitty, legs obviously 4, colon, and head, it's not surprise, 1. We can now use our isArray method. We will start with our array, which is obviously an array, and we call this function by accessing an array object, isArray, and we pass here our array. We also need to console log it so we can see the result. What is the result? Let's save it. It's true. Well, that's not a surprise. Let's give it a string here. False object, maybe. False. So that's it. Remember that you have to use an array object to use this method. And now we go to the find method. This one is a little bit more interesting because it requires a callback function. We've got our array, and to use the find method we need to create a callback function. But let's quickly explain what does a find do. The find method searches for any kind of object or any kind of element in our array, and as I said, or maybe an object in our array, or maybe a property in the object. It's all up to us, and it returns only the first element that it finds. So this is very important, that it returns only one element, the first that it will find on its way. So first of all, let's create a function that will allow us to return an element from the array. Let's call it function beer. Function. It takes one parameter, one item. Let's give it an item, and then we just want to return an item that is equal to, we can use 3 or 2, but we want to be more specific, so we want to return an item that is equal to beer. Having that, we need to console log. Yeah, what do we need to console log? We need to return a result. So let result, and it's equal to array dot find, and here we pass our function, so beer function. We can copy that result and paste it inside console log. Let's save it, and you can see that we got our beer here. What happens if we wanted to make it a little bit more fancy, or let's say we got beer instead of a carrot? So now the function runs inside this array. It goes through the first element, second, the first element, and it returns this one. So the second beer is forgotten, which is pretty sad. And what if you wanted to make something cooler? Let's say we want to remove that, and we want to create an array of objects. So we can say name team occupation, let's say teacher, and let me just copy that. Tom, and Carol. Yeah. Teacher, dentist, astronaut, and a vet. Okay, let's remember about these. What did I forget? Why do I have these? Oh, okay. Now it's fine. So what we need to do now is, as we got these, we need to modify our array a little bit so it's easier for us to use. Let's say person, and we're gonna use person here, and the person which occupation is, let's say, vet. So we will be looking for someone who is a vet, and what we want to return is the name of this person. Okay, let's call it just a function, which is not a proper name. Let's call it vet function and vet function. We want to find someone who is a vet, and we want to return a name of this person to this variable, and then we will return this variable. As I save it, you can see that is a Carol. So what if I changed Tom to a vet? You guessed it, now we got a Tom here. We can only find the first one that is inside our array or inside the list of our objects. So this is basically up to us what we type inside of this function. We can create very sophisticated mathematical expressions here that will calculate anything that is inside of these arrays that we want to find, and it will find just the first element. For example, if we had like an array of p numbers, we can find the first sequence of few numbers that are inside of this. So this is pretty useful function. So right now, as we know how find method works, we will also know how findIndex works. It's very similar, well, it's almost the same. However, it only returns the index. It returns one number. So if I say find index now, it's undefined. Why? Because we can't use name, and we got a 1. We also use callback function, and we ask for return of the person that his job is vet, and it finds the first person, and in this case is Tom. He's a vet. Let's say chef. I hope it works like that, and we got 3. So now it's 0, 1, 2, and 3. So the Carol is our response, the index, and we can use that result, for example, to console log array, the first or the index that is provided to us by the result of this function, and we can just console log the whole object. As we find it, we can pop it on the screen and use it in any way we want. So that's it for today. We have covered 6 very important methods that's worth to know. In the upcoming videos, I will try to cover 6 or 7 more, so stay tuned. Hope you found it useful. Let me know if you use them, let me know how you use them, and if you got any interesting methods that you want me to cover or any kind of topics that you want to hear about, let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next one. Bye.